The quiet power. Darius Whitfield stepped out of his black Lincoln Continental onto the circular driveway of the downtown San Jose hotel. The morning light caught the tailored lines of his navy blue suit as he adjusted his cuff. Every detail of his appearance spoke of precision and purpose. Sharp lines, crisp white shirt, Italian leather shoes polished to perfection. It was 7:58 a.m., and in just over an hour he would deliver the keynote address at the Summit Net Conference, an event that his company, Whitfield Dynamics, had organized, bringing together 60 of the most influential tech investors on the West Coast. But the valet didn't step forward to take his keys. Instead, the young man looked away, pretending to check his phone before turning to a car that had pulled in behind Darius. "Hey, can you park this one?" the valet called to his colleague, gesturing past Darius as if he weren't there. Darius glanced at the hotel's entrance. Clean glass doors leading to a quiet foyer. With a slight tightening of his jaw, he slipped his keys back into his pocket, returned to his car, and parked it himself. As he walked through the front doors, he noticed how the concierge's smile flickered and vanished upon seeing him. "Can I help you?" asked the woman at the reception desk without looking up from her computer. "Yes," Darius replied evenly. "I'm here for the Summit Net Conference. I believe you have the Redwood Room reserved for us." The woman scanned his face, frowned slightly, then looked back at her screen. "Do you work for one of the vendors?" she asked. "No," he said. "I'm the CEO." She blinked. "Right. Could you wait outside for a moment? We're still prepping the space." "I'm also the keynote speaker," he added. There was no apology, no moment of recognition, just a tight smile. "Still, we're not quite ready. Please wait outside." A young man in a blazer with a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt appeared behind the receptionist. He looked Darius up and down as if checking for a security badge. "You with security?" he asked in a lowered voice. "I'm Darius Whitfield," he replied calmly. "The conference you're hosting today, I run it." After a beat of silence, the man tilted his head toward the door. "Just give us a few minutes, sir. We'll call someone to come get you." Darius exhaled slowly as he was escorted back outside. Standing on the pavement, he checked his watch. 8:09 a.m. His keynote wasn't scheduled until 9, so he had time. But something was building inside him. Not hot anger, but something colder and more resolute. Through the glass doors, he watched as an early arrival, a white man in a gray plaid suit, was greeted warmly by the same staff who had just dismissed him. The man was escorted through the lobby without hesitation, not once asked to wait outside. Darius's phone vibrated in his pocket. "Boss," came the voice of his assistant Jalen. "Just checking? Did they greet you yet?" Darius kept his eyes on the hotel doors. Not exactly. There was a pause on the line. Jalen had worked with him long enough to recognize that tone, measured, without inflection, the voice Darius used when he was processing something significant. "What do you mean, not exactly?" "They asked me to wait outside," Darius replied. "Want me to come down?" Jalen's voice was alert now. "Number stay with the investors. They'll be arriving in the next 15 minutes. Let me handle this." Darius ended the call, straightened his tie, and walked back through the doors. The receptionist's expression didn't change when she saw him return. "I thought I asked you to wait outside, sir," she said, tapping at her keyboard. "And I waited," Darius replied calmly. "Now I'd like to speak with the event coordinator. My name is Darius Whitfield. I'm the founder and CEO of Whitfield Dynamics. We booked the Redwood Room and 2 floors of your suites for this conference." She finally looked directly at him, but there was no apology in her eyes, only doubt, as if she were trying to determine if this was some kind of prank. "Mr. Whitmore, was it? Whitfield?" She turned to her colleague with the walkie-talkie. "Can you call Gina from events?" While the man stepped away, Darius noticed 2 of his board members stepping out of the elevator. conference badges prominently displayed on their lapels. They were immediately greeted by a hotel manager who seemed to materialize out of nowhere to shake their hands. Darius raised his hand slightly to catch the manager's attention. The man glanced his way, hesitated, then deliberately turned away. "Ma'am," Darius said, his voice still even but firm. "I'm going to say this one more time. I'm not a guest. I'm not with security. I'm not delivering anything. I'm the reason these people are staying here. I organized this entire summit. I brought 60 of the most influential investors in West Coast tech into this building today." Before she could respond, the man with the walkie-talkie returned. "She's on her way," he said. Then after a pause, "You really the CEO?" Darius gave a small smile. "I didn't just build this company. I financed it. I wrote the first line of code. I signed the contract with this hotel. And I chose this location because I believed in the idea of professional courtesy." After they both stared at him, he added, "I've got $5 billion under management, and I almost trusted you to help grow that." The silence that followed was no longer doubtful but uncomfortable. Before either staff member could respond, Gina from events appeared in the lobby, already speaking as she approached. "Mr. Whitfield, I am so sorry for the delay. We weren't informed you'd arrived. Please come with me. We have the Redwood room set up and coffee being served. The investors are already gathering." As Darius followed her past the reception desk, he noticed the flush on the receptionist's face, but he said nothing more. What they had failed to see wasn't a man trying to access a space where he didn't belong. What they had missed was a man who owned the space, who had given them every opportunity to correct their mistake. They had chosen not to. The Redwood room was at the back of the hotel's conference wing. Inside, the lights were dimmed for the presentation. Rows of chairs arranged before a podium bearing the Summit Net logo. Jalen was at the front checking sound levels with the AV technician while early arrivals mingled over coffee. But Darius didn't head for the podium. Instead, he stepped into a side room, the private lounge reserved for speakers, and closed the door. He pulled out his phone. "Tammy," he said when his head of operations answered, "we're moving the summit." There was no gasp of surprise. Tammy knew his tone. "Today?" she asked. "Right now? You want to relocate 50 people with less than an hour's notice?" "Not want. Need." She didn't argue. "You want me to call the Fairmont or the Hayes?" "Hayes," he decided. "I want every investor redirected there. Make sure they understand this isn't a scheduling issue. It's a matter of principle. I'll explain more when we're set. Also, cancel the rest of our booking here, suites included. Charge the penalty to me personally if they refuse to release." "Understood," Tammy replied. "I'll call Jalen too. Let him know to delay the opening and start rerouting the guests." After ending the call, Darius looked at his reflection in the dark glass of the window. He didn't feel triumphant or vindicated, just tired. Tired of walking into rooms where people saw everything about him except who he actually was. A soft knock at the door announced Jalen. "You want to run through slides?" Darius shook his head. "Change of plans." Jalen raised an eyebrow. "Oh, we're leaving?" "I've already made the call." It took a moment, but then Jalen nodded in understanding. "They didn't even try to make it right, did they?" "Nope. Want me to tell the board?" "I'll speak to them myself. Just get the guests moving and make sure no one thanks the hotel on their way out." Within minutes, Jalen was quietly passing the word through handshakes and discreet conversations. "Emergency relocation," he whispered to one group. "We've got a better setup just a few blocks over," he told another. "Mr. Whitfield will explain everything." Meanwhile, Tammy was on the line with the Hayes, securing their venue, arranging staff, and transferring equipment and catering. Darius returned to the Redwood room only once to collect his notes and laptop. As he was packing up, a hotel manager appeared, his face tense, clutching a folder. Mr. Whitfield, I understand there was a mix-up at the front desk this morning, and I want to personally apologize. It was never our intention to offend. You didn't offend me, Darius interrupted calmly. You just disqualified yourselves. This isn't about ego, it's about standards. The manager blinked. Can we make this right? Darius zipped his laptop case and looked directly at him. You had your chance. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because sometimes, the only thing louder than outrage is absence. And the Redwood Room, which minutes ago had been filling with investors, was now emptying rapidly. As Darius walked through the lobby one last time, he saw the receptionist watching him, her lips pressed into a tight line. Outside, a black SUV was waiting. The driver opened the door, and Darius got in as his phone began to ring. By the time the first tray of croissants reached the now half-empty Redwood Room, most of the conference attendees were already gathering in the grand atrium of the Hayes, San Jose's other luxury hotel. Unlike at the first venue, the staff here didn't question who Darius was. They welcomed him, as if they'd been expecting him all along. Back at the original hotel, confusion reigned. The receptionist kept scrolling through the guest list, her brow furrowed. Gina, she said into the phone. The conference guests. They're leaving. Gina, who was in the loading bay overseeing the AV team as they packed up equipment, sounded bewildered. What do you mean, leaving? People are checking out, canceling their keys. Some are just walking out without saying anything. In less than 20 minutes, the lobby that had been buzzing with networking was eerily quiet. Meanwhile, the manager received a call that made him pale. Sir, the company has canceled all bookings. The suites, the Redwood Room, catering, everything. That's not possible, he objected. It's summit day. But it was happening. Calls flooded in from every department. This guest just left without notice. This client says they won't be paying for today's brunch. They said to talk to Mr. Whitfield. That SUV outside took him and the others. They're gone. The shift was like watching dominoes fall. No dramatics, no accusations, just absence. At the Hayes, Darius stood before a projection screen in a sunlit conference room. He addressed the crowd calmly, without a hint of bitterness. Before we begin, I want to thank you all for your flexibility. I know the change of venue was unexpected, but I believe where we gather says a lot about what we value. A murmur of agreement passed through the audience. I chose the previous hotel for its reputation, its service, its proximity to your offices, but this morning I was reminded that a polished lobby and a 5-star rating don't guarantee respect. He paused briefly. I was asked to wait outside, twice, by staff who never once asked my name. I parked my own car. I explained who I was. But in that space, none of it mattered. Some jaws tightened, heads shook in disbelief or recognition. Some of you might be surprised by this, others less so. He let that sink in. But I don't believe in yelling. I don't believe in dragging people down just to prove a point. I believe in moving forward, and today we're doing just that. Somewhere that sees us, hears us, and treats our business with the seriousness it deserves. The crowd applauded, not from pity, but respect. From the back of the room, Jalen watched with pride. Meanwhile, at the first hotel, staff were dismantling the conference setup. The manager stared at a formal notice from Whitfield Dynamics terminating their agreement, effective immediately. No lawsuit, no threats, just a clean severance and a significant financial loss. He called the general manager. We lost the event, he said. How? The guest we didn't recognize. He was the event. Later that afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the streets of San Jose, Darius sat in the back of the SUV, his suit jacket folded beside him. He had removed his tie, leaving just the open collar of his white shirt, and there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there that morning. Jalen sat next to him, scrolling through emails on his tablet. "You sure you don't want me to write a public statement?" he asked. "People are already posting about it. Someone from Marlowe and Banks took a video of you walking out." Darius shook his head. "Let them talk. I'm not here to go viral." He leaned back against the seat, looking out the window at ordinary life continuing. Children riding bikes, a woman helping an elderly man into a dental office. Nothing remarkable. Just another day. "Can I ask you something?" Jalen said, without looking up. "Go ahead." "Why didn't you just go off on them? I mean, they deserved it. After everything ... Darius was quiet for a moment, his gaze still fixed on the world outside. Finally, he said, "When I was 19, I walked into my first interview with a resume full of summer jobs and a GPA that should have opened doors. The receptionist asked if I was delivering food. I smiled, said no, waited 2 hours. The interview never happened. They forgot I was there." Jalen listened in silence. "I could have made noise, made a scene, but I didn't. I left, found another door, and another after that." He rubbed his hands together slowly. "Thing is, I spent the first part of my life thinking if I just achieved enough, people would stop making those assumptions, that degrees and money and suits would somehow speak louder." He turned to Jalen. "They don't." "But this wasn't just another receptionist," Jalen countered. "This was a whole hotel, a whole moment." "Exactly," Darius nodded. "That's why I left. Because I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need them to understand. I needed the people watching to see what it looks like when you refuse to beg for respect you've already earned." He looked out the window again. "My father used to say, you can't force people to see you, but you can choose where you won't be invisible." The SUV stopped at a light. Across the intersection, a billboard advertised a startup accelerator. Young faces, sleek logos, bold promises. Jalen smiled. "You ever think we'd be the ones running those things instead of applying to them?" "Every day," Darius replied with a slight smile. "And sometimes, it still doesn't feel real." The SUV pulled up in front of the Whitfield Dynamics building, an elegant structure of glass and steel. As they entered, the receptionist greeted them warmly, already holding the elevator. During the ride up, Jalen broke the silence. "You ever think about telling that story? The 19-year-old version?" "Maybe," Darius said. "Not for sympathy, but for clarity. People think this stuff just happens occasionally. One bad day, one rude employee. But it's never just about one moment. It's about patterns, repeated, refined, and normalized." He stepped off the elevator, briefcase in hand. "You can't fix what people won't acknowledge, but you can show them how to walk away from it with your dignity intact." What Darius didn't realize was that his quiet stand was already rippling outward. The fallout began subtly. Whispers in conference rooms, emails exchanged between executive assistants. By midweek, 3 other companies had quietly canceled their bookings with the same hotel. No dramatic announcements, just brief messages. "We've decided to move in a different direction." In boardrooms across the city, executives were having pointed conversations. "You hear what happened with Whitfield's team? Yeah, we don't need that kind of risk tied to our name. What's the backup venue again?" The hotel attempted damage control. A regional sales director sent an email to Whitfield Dynamics offering complimentary bookings, free suites, and spa credits for future events. The email didn't make it past Tammy. She read it, closed it, and marked it as handled. Darius never saw it, because when trust breaks that way, it's not something you repair with discounts. It's not a billing issue. It's about what you allow to happen on your watch. Word of the incident spread to tech media. A small outlet published not an exposé, but a simple timeline. What happened? Who witnessed it? The venue change? The deliberate silence afterward? That story found its way into inboxes, then text threads, and eventually into conversations at happy hours where young black professionals quietly raised their glasses to Darius Whitfield, not because he had made a scene, but because he hadn't needed to. Because sometimes the strongest statement isn't slamming a door, but walking away as if the room never deserved you in the first place. At the Whitfield Dynamics office the next day, Darius sat at the head of the boardroom table with 4 senior staff members and 3 partners from a Seattle private equity firm. "We heard about the switch," one investor mentioned carefully. "People are still talking about it." Darius leaned back slightly. "Is that a problem for you?" "Not at all," the man replied. "In fact, it told us more about your leadership than any slide deck could have." Another investor nodded. "It's rare to see someone with that kind of control under pressure. That's where trust comes from." Darius acknowledged this with a small nod, but didn't elaborate. This wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to play by a rigged rulebook to begin with. That evening, as most of the staff had gone home, Darius walked the quiet floor of the office. He paused at a whiteboard covered in diagrams, notes, and equations, evidence of the actual work his company was known for. Jalen was there too, drinking from a chipped mug. "You see the write-up?" Jalen asked. "I did. They left out the part where the valet ignored me." "They always leave something out," Darius remarked. "Doesn't matter," Jalen said. "People know. The ones who need to understand. They got the message." Darius studied the whiteboard. "You know, when we built this place, I didn't want it to be flashy. I didn't want people to walk in and feel impressed. I wanted them to feel seen. That's the difference. They see you now." "No," Darius said quietly. "They always saw me. They just never expected me to be the one signing the checks." He turned toward his office but paused in the doorway. "Let's keep building," he said simply. The next morning, Darius stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, holding a mug of black coffee. The sky was overcast, casting a silver light that made the city below seem muted and distant. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said without turning. Elijah Green entered, a promising junior analyst in his mid-20s, still finding his footing in the corporate world. He held a folder but seemed hesitant. "You said you wanted to meet?" he asked. Darius nodded and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Elijah sat, placing the folder on his lap but not opening it. He seemed unsure how to begin. I heard what happened at the hotel," he finally said. "Some of us were talking about it in the break room yesterday." Darius didn't respond immediately. He let the silence settle, not uncomfortable, just patient. "I guess I just wanted to ask, how do you not let it get to you?" Elijah asked. "How do you stay so calm when it's that obvious what's happening?" Darius smiled slightly. "You think I stayed calm?" Elijah looked surprised. "Didn't you?" "No," Darius said, setting his coffee down. "I just didn't let them see it." He leaned forward. "You know what they saw when I walked into that hotel? A man standing where they didn't think he should be. Nothing else mattered. Not the work, not the contracts, not the conference we brought them. Just their preconceived notion of what power looks like and who doesn't fit that image." "So why not confront them?" Elijah asked earnestly. "Why not call them out and make them see?" "Because the world already sees." "That's not the problem," Darius explained. "The real fight isn't about proving anything to them. It's about teaching the people who come after us that you don't need their approval to make your moves. You don't need permission to belong." Elijah nodded slowly. "You handled it with class. If it were me, I don't know." "That's the thing," Darius interrupted gently. "You don't have to know right now. You just have to remember this. Never trade your composure for someone else's ignorance. If they misjudge you, let them. But make sure that the space you're building, your company, your reputation, your team, never makes anyone else feel like they don't belong there. Elijah sat back, considering the weight of those words. That's what it means to lead, Darius continued. You don't yell at the wall, you build a door somewhere else. After a moment of silence, Darius gestured to the folder. Now, what's in here? Oh, right, Elijah said, snapping back to business mode. New proposal from the behavioral data team. We made those changes you suggested last week. Darius opened it and scanned the first page. Good. Let's meet with the team this afternoon. As Elijah stood to leave, he paused at the door. Thank you, he said. For what? For showing us how to move without ever lowering yourself. Darius acknowledged this with a quiet nod, and Elijah left. Outside, traffic flowed steadily. People moved about their days, completely unaware of the small but significant shift that had occurred. But those who had witnessed it wouldn't forget, because this wasn't just about one man and one hotel. It was about all the rooms people walk into, where someone looks up and sees only what they expect to see. It was about how power speaks through action, not reaction. And it was about rewriting rules without ever picking up the pen someone else tried to hand you. If you've ever walked into a room and felt invisible, if you've ever had to prove your right to be somewhere, this story isn't just familiar, it's personal. It's about the dignity of walking away not because you can't win, but because some games aren't worth playing. It's about understanding that sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't confrontation, it's consequence. In the days that followed, Darius wouldn't tell this story at conferences or in interviews. He didn't need to. His actions had spoken clearly enough, reminding everyone that true leadership isn't measured by how loudly you can protest injustice, but by how firmly you can walk away from it, taking your value with you. And perhaps most importantly, it showed that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in demanding respect, but in quietly, decisively demonstrating why you've earned it all along.